Hello. It's been about 10 seconds for me since the last episode. Are you watching on a playlist? Has it been about 10 seconds for you too? Or, by the magical nature of recording things and podcasting and taking time in between things, has it been a week, a month, a year? Time travel. Either way, it's time for BS with S.A.C. Fake pipe. I don't know. I don't know what a fake pipe would look like with my hand. But we're going to keep reading. Last time, regardless of how long it's been for you, William and Ollivander were sitting in an inn in the pirate city of Freeport when they were approached by a kind of creepy, sketchy-looking dude. Villius Bloodstone called himself the mayor, and he had a very suspicious quest for them. He wanted them to retrieve the body of his brother, whom he said was killed by bandits. Ollivander is pretty sure that the whole thing is a ruse, that Villius had him killed. He just wanted to kill him outright, but William said, no, we need to give him a fair shot, justice, and all that kind of stuff. So William has to go out on his own to recover this body, and he's a little nervous because it's the very first time he has willingly gone off on an adventure rather than just had adventure happen to him. So we'll see how that works out for him. Chapter 13, The Cave. William stood before the cave opening, beyond which lay any number of unnamed evils, and the corpse of a man far greater than William, who couldn't survive the horrors within. He had had no difficulty finding the place. Villius's directions had been spot on. Grass no longer grew on the well-worn path, so walking it posed no challenge, and William's leg was on the mend besides. He could now put a little weight on it without pain, a decent bit with only mild discomfort, and could walk outright with little more than a wince and a slight limp. The weather, too, gave no impediment. The evening sky was dark and fair, a few clouds, nothing ominous, mind you, just enough to cast deep shadows, while still letting enough light through to really make the colors of everything pop. The purpling sky hung overhead, the golden setting sun shining onto fluffy cotton ball clouds, turning them yellow in its fading light. Flowers of scarlet and indigo grew between emerald green leaves from branches and trees of whatever color was the rich, vivid, and beautiful version of brown. Chocolate, William wondered, coffee, mocha, cinnamon? That just makes it sound like there are twigs in my food. Surely there exists some non-edible form of the color brown. He sat on a nearby stone and pondered the question for 5 minutes or so, far longer than was prudent. Then he thought about other things. What made birds fly? Where did the lint in his belly button come from? Who decided we should call frogs frogs? And why? It seems such a funny-sounding word. Frog. 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 Where was that ant going? Who first thought up bread? Because that seemed to be the most brilliant idea of all time. Take something tiny growing at the end of a tall grass, collect lots of it, grind it into powder, add water and eggs, apply heat. Surely the recipe came down from the gods themselves. Man could hardly be so clever. Is it safe? Came a muffled voice. William nearly leapt from his own skin to hide, scanning the trees and bushes for brigands and ruffians, the type known in these parts for killing heroes. More than a moment later, it occurred to the boy that the voice had come from his bag. Relaxing just enough to realize exactly how heavily his heart pounded, William opened the bag. What do you want? William whispered, loud enough to defeat the purpose of whispering. Is it safe? Bloody John repeated. I don't know, William confessed. I haven't gone in yet. What does that even mean? The pirate asked, confused. The cave, William explained, though it did little to help the buccaneer in a bag understand. Look, if you're gonna speak in riddles, that's your decision, but give me a straight answer first. Is Ollivander about? Oh, right, no, William said, realizing the pirate had been hiding in the bag for quite some time. The man had no knowledge whatsoever of the corrupt mayor or his twisted little quest. Well, Bloody John was a pirate. He more than likely knew keenly of the mayor's corruption, but the whole bit about the cave would be news to him. William explained as best he could. Let me get this straight, Ollivander said, sorting out the details in his head. You're just now figuring out Villius's evil. And now you're about to walk into a cave where he probably has murderers and cutthroats hiding and lurking at every corner, all so you can find a dead body and Ollivander ain't about. That's the long and short of it, William said, nodding. Then that answers my question. Yes, it's safe. The pirate scampered up the rope and hauled himself free from the bag, stretching like a cat once he climbed out. Then he wandered off into the bushes for a moment. William could hear rustling of leaves and cloth and splash of liquid and loud, relieved groans. When Bloody John returned, he adjusted his trousers and smiled. "It's good to stretch the old leg and breathe the fresh air," he said. His face beamed in the last breath of daylight. He propped his fists on his hips the way William always imagined heroes did, while basking in the sun's rays on a fresh field of victory. Not that the boy had in any way viewed Bloody John as heroic. "It's not the fresh salt of the sea air, but it'll do." "Yeah, it's nice, all right," William said. "So it seems to me that you'd do a much better job of retrieving that body if you actually went inside the cave." "Does it now?" William asked. "It does," Bloody John said. "So why ain't you in that cave? You're not worried about your town anymore. Got time to spare now." William stared at his feet as they kicked at the dirt. "Ah," the pirate said. "I see. You're a coward and you ain't allowed to say a thing to me about me hiding in the bag." "I'm not a coward," William protested. "I was just, stalling for time, staring at leaves, imagining pictures in the clouds. Look, it ain't no big deal. It's just a cave. A cave with a dead man in it. Maybe a few bandits. It's not like there's a dragon or nothing in there. You probably only gotta walk in maybe, 100 feet, grab the body, drag him out. Nothing to be afraid of. You'll be in and out in no time." "I suppose you're right." William strapped the bag to his back and stepped into the cave. After a few steps, he turned back. "You coming, John?" "Absolutely not," the pirate said. "There could be monsters in there." "You just said there probably weren't any." "No," he corrected. There probably weren't no dragons. There's a difference." William gave Bloody John a dismissive wave, lit a torch, and stepped in. The cave entrance wasn't too terribly big as far as cave mouths went. Maybe an uneven 7-foot circle. The passage just beyond wasn't much bigger. The natural stone walls looked to be roughly hewn in places for easier movement. Someone had definitely spent some time here in the past, time enough at least to make the place more comfortable. A little over 100 yards in, William smelled the pungent stench of feces and decay, and a moment later he discovered the source. 4 dead bodies lay strewn about, each decorated in sword wounds of various sizes and shapes. Their clothes suggested men of a questionable occupation, presumably along the lines of involuntary tax collectors on roads no one knew had tolls. Beside them lay the corpses of a couple of creatures that appeared to be the malformed children of a bear and some form of reptile. William searched the area, but couldn't find the body of anyone even remotely reputable. Marcus had been here. The bodies made that abundantly clear, but he was gone now. He explored further into the cave, in equal parts to fulfill his obligation and to escape the smell. He could make out a set of footprints, carmine in color, which he presumed to be made in dried blood, barely standing out against the cave floor. It seemed to him a logical trail to follow to find Marcus, so he did. It also seemed to him the sort of thing that might attract carrion feeders and creatures which preyed on the weak and wounded, so he drew his sword and tried to hold it like he knew how to use it. He effected a cautious sort of sidestep that he hoped projected the image of a master fencer. Garden-variety monsters might not know a thing about swords, let alone swordplay, and any dungeon boss worth his weight in evil would know an expert fencer would never use a scimitar. The middle-of-the-road minions, however, might be smart enough to recognize the danger, but dumb enough to see how little actually existed, and William had no qualms about scaring as much opposition as possible. Fights were not his specialty. The footprints ended abruptly at a cave wall. William's eyebrows arched, eyes widened. He hadn't expected this. Had the trail ended with a corpse, or bones, or the web of a giant spider, William would have understood. He would have been afraid, without a doubt. Even little spiders gave him the shivers. But he would at least understand why the bloody tracks had stopped. He stooped low to the cave for a closer look. Perhaps Marcus had cleaned his boots, but no, there didn't seem to be any scuffing of feet or piles of dried blood and dirt. Nor was there any sign that maybe, for reasons beyond William's ken, Marcus had decided that he'd had enough of this forward nonsense, and that the only reasonable way out was to retrace his exact steps to the mouth of the cave by walking backwards. But why? William couldn't fathom a reason for such a long and painstaking act. What if Marcus discovered a trap in the floor? And worse, there had been traps all along the corridor, and through sheer luck he'd managed to avoid said traps to this point. Retracing his exact steps would be the only safe way out. William considered how lucky he would have to be to likewise not have stumbled into a trap so lethal it sent a daring adventurer walking dangerously backwards for half an hour, carefully matching his exact path in step for step. The boy determined he would have to have been very fortunate himself to accomplish such a feat, and decided that he had not now, nor in fact ever, possessed that much luck. So much for that theory. What if the trap triggered when Marcus placed those final steps, vaporizing him where he stood, or pulling him up to the ceiling where some horrible device converted his body into adventurer putty? William leaned back the length of a spear, eyes darting every which way, daring the darkness to strike, while secretly hoping the darkness had no time to oblige the challenges of would-be heroes. When he didn't die, he pulled his 10-foot pole from his bag and prodded methodically at the floor where the trail ended. Nothing. How curious. The boy approached the wall again and peered at its cracks and ridges. Perhaps Marcus climbed somewhere, but why? The ceiling was all of 8 feet high. William couldn't even stand his pole up entirely. Why would anyone climb in such circumstances? He held the torch close, shining light into the nooks and crannies of the rock, running his fingers along the cold stone in search of... what? Clues? He was no detective. William hardly considered himself qualified to look for loose change, let alone missing adventurers in strange caves. He turned from the mystery and slumped down to the floor, crying. He felt worthless. How much time had he wasted gallivanting across 3 realms, as though he might somehow save the day, arriving on his shiny white horse with the mighty Ollivander in tow? And where was Ollivander now? Sitting in a hotel room, probably bored to tears counting bricks in the walls? Meanwhile, William sat weeping like a small child with a skinned knee in a cave far from home, playing at being a hero, trying to rescue a dead man while the living probably screamed in agony, his precious home of Barrow's End burning to cinders, with everyone he knew and loved locked inside. Mother, father, the twins Hannah and Jacob, Sarah, probably nothing left but ash and bone, and echoing wails that would haunt him until time itself faded away. He was a fool for ever thinking himself anything more or less than a useless farm boy, leading a meaningless life from a town of no consequence. Worthless, foolish, no good, harebrained squanderer of chances. He leaned back against the cold, unforgiving stone, hot, salty tears burning at his cheeks, and beat his head against the wall, as he pounded his fists in futility and defeat. From somewhere far off there came a click, then a whirring, then the grinding of stone against heavy stone. Then the wall fell away, and the boy collapsed to his back, sprawling on the cave floor, half in the passage, half somewhere new. His head swam. And that's where we will stop that one for tonight. Secret passages. I wonder where they lead. We'll find out next time. But until then, have good dreams. Good night.